Hello, welcome to the Healthy Alternatives podcast. I am Dr. Christine Sauer with DocChristine.com. Today's show is a recording of my radio show of the same name. Enjoy! Good afternoon, this is Dr. Christine Sauer, your host of the show Healthy Alternatives here on 97.5 CIOE-FM with live stream on communityradio.ca every Thursday at 12 noon Atlantic Standard Time. Thanks for tuning in today. In this show, I will talk, mostly with guests, about all aspects of health, healthcare and wellness, from conventional to alternative and everything in between. My mission for this radio show is to help change people's lives for the better by informing them about different options to get and stay healthy and well so they can choose for themselves which option might work in their case. And if you feel you're stuck in a dark place, I want to tell you, don't give up. There is a light at the end of the tunnel for you too. Today I'm extremely pleased to be again with Dr. Russell Jaffe. Dr. Jaffe is a functional medicine pioneer and was so kind to share his story and some of his phenomenal knowledge and experience in a previous show. Welcome back, Russell. It's a pleasure.
A pleasure to be back.
Thank you. So today you said you can talk about 8 tests to save your life. Now that sounds really interesting.
Yes, we at the Health Studies Collegium Foundation looked at the test to cover epigenetics. Now, most people are familiar with genetics. It's your DNA blueprint. It's what you get from your parents, although it's greatly influenced by your lifestyle choices, your attitude and environment. So we wanted to know what tests would you need if you wanted to cover lifestyle. Epigenetics, the things you can influence, the 92% of your lifetime quality of health and life that's under habit choice. 8% you can blame mom and dad. 8% is genetic. 92% is lifestyle choices.
Yep, and most people see it the other way around.
We screened over 100,000 different lab tests, many of which are markers of one kind or another, but we require that they be predictive. And a predictive biomarker is one that tells you what you need today as well as the chance of living 10 or more years. And the predictive biomarker has to have been done on every geography, every ethnic group, every socioeconomic group. You have to have what's called robust data to qualify as a predictive biomarker, because they're all known as all-cause morbidity and mortality markers for the technical people who listen in. But what it means is the quality of your life today and tomorrow and the probability that you will live 10 or more years. And then we add one more nuance, which is we interpret these to best outcome goal values, and we ignore laboratory ranges.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Well, with each of the 8 tests, we know what the healthy people value is, either the value or the range, and for each of those 8 tests, we'll tell you, healthy people have this value or range, and you should too if you want to be healthy.
I love that because it's not normal.
You're not at your goal value.
Yes.
Right. If you're not at your goal value, if you're not at your goal value, we can tell you what changes to make in regard to what you eat and drink, what you think and do, that we have found from experience and from literature reviews to be most likely to safely and effectively bring you back to the best outcome goal value.
Excellent. Now, what is it? Everybody wants to know.
The 8 tests, right. So the 8 tests, I'll list the 8 tests, and then we'll come back and talk about what each one measures and what the goal value is, if that's okay. So the 8 tests, hemoglobin A1C. It's a very common test, but we also know that the range of values has to do with statistics and populations and not about me as an individual.
Right.
So hemoglobin A1C is the first. The second is high sensitivity C-reactive protein, HSCRP. Again, a familiar test, but with a nuance in interpretation. Then homocysteine, an amino acid that is in balance with methionine, and a very important one in regard to cardiovascular risk and stroke risk, etc. Then you get to lymphocyte response assay, LRA, because you want your immune system to be tolerant and you want it to be able to defend you and repair you and be able to eliminate the abnormal cancer cells that everybody makes every day. So it's kind of important. The fifth test is urine pH after rest, so you can check if you need more minerals in your cells. If you have metabolic acidosis, you'll put too much acid in the urine after rest, and we can tell you what to do about that in regard to supplementation. The next is vitamin D levels, an accurate 25-hydroxy-D, and we'll tell you what the healthy people range is for that. And then an omega-3 index, which is the balance of essential fats that get translated into very important what are called cytokine molecules, amplifying molecules in biology. And last, but important, is 8-oxoguanine, less familiar, but it's the measure of oxidative risk and damage to your DNA. And let me check. You want to keep that to a minimum of less than 5. Oh, I'll get back to the goal values in a minute. So those are the 8 tests. Now we got the 8 tests. Let's go back and see what do each of those tests measure and what is the goal value. Is that okay?
Excellent. I love it because it's very hard here to get anything other than HbA1c and the CRP, only if you ask for.
No, I understand. And let me, if I can, add how you would explain to a conventional doctor why it'll save your life to do these tests.
Yeah.
And I remember Marc Lalonde in the original days of the Canadian health system. You didn't get all that the father, Pierre Trudeau, and Marc Lalonde intended, but you've got what you got.
Right.
Anyway,
now, let's talk about it and why it's important.
Yeah, so hemoglobin A1c is the measure of average sugar stuck onto protein. And one of my many mentors, Paul Gallup, in the late 1960s, realized that there was an intense relationship between how much sugar was stuck onto protein and your risk of having a heart attack or a cardiovascular event or a stroke. So hemoglobin A1c is better even than blood sugar, fasting blood sugar, 2-hour postprandial, ratio of insulin to glucose. We've done outcome studies in type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and I'm glad to tell you highly successful compared to best standard of care, by using these kinds of functional approaches and not being subject to what's called white coat hyperglycemia, kind of like white coat hypertension. When many people go to have blood drawn, there's a little adrenaline surge at the time when someone puts a needle in your vein, which raises your adrenaline, raises your blood sugar transiently because it's considered to be a threat. Well, when someone puts a needle in your vein, you might think that's a threat. So white coat hyperglycemia is a big problem. But hemoglobin A1c is the average sugar over 3 months or so. And so we come back and remeasure it in 3 to 6 months to see if it's at its best outcome goal value, which is less than 5%. And simply by cutting added sugar out of my diet, I was able to get my hemoglobin A1c to 4.5%. And I know there was a recent article that said too low is too low, too high is too high, Goldilocks is correct, you want to be in the middle. I can tell you the error of that report, but the bottom line is you want to be less than 5%, because when you're above 5%, you move quickly into prediabetes and syndrome X and metabolic syndrome and overweight and underfunctioning and eventually diabetes, which afflicts today over 100 million Americans. Prediabetes and diabetes afflicts 1 in 3 in America. And while you Canadians are more active, physically active, and that's good, I'll bet it's coming along in Canada too. We're overfed and undernourished.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you've got hemoglobin A1c. HSCRP should be less than 0.5 because this is the measure of repair need. Now, we think of it in terms of inflammation, We think of it in terms of cardiac risk. Sometimes it's called the cardio-CRP, the high sensitivity or HSCRP, not the average CRP, because it's the lower end of the range that's most important. And a healthy person will be able to repair without calling from the liver a molecule called CRP that is basically a cry for help. I need to repair more than I'm able to. Please send reinforcements. That's what CRP says when the liver produces it on demand from the body because the immune system is calling for help. The next test is homocysteine. Again, a classic test of cardiovascular risk. So anyone with a family history of heart attack, stroke, peripheral vascular disease, coronary artery disease, cerebrovascular disease, carotid disease, anything that has to do with your heart, the blood vessels, and your brain relates to homocysteine. And we've known this since Kilmer-McCulley in the 60s put it on the map, and we know that doing an accurate plasma homocysteine is predictive. Notice I said accurate. Then the fourth is, and your value should be less than 6.
Value should be less than 6. And that's actually a good point where we have to stop the first half of the show. And it is extremely interesting. So I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the broadcast after the commercial break to hear more with Dr. Jaffe about the 8 tests to save your life. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to Healthy Alternatives here on 97.5 CIOE-FM or on the web at communityradio.ca. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Sauer, and today I'm talking with Dr. Russell Jaffe, a functional medicine pioneer, about the 8 lab tests to save your life. Now, the first half we talked about HbA1c, the CRP, and the homocysteine. But I know there's 5 interesting ones left. So let's go on.
Yes. So next is LRA, lymphocyte response assay. This is a measure of immune tolerance and intolerance. It has to do with what you eat and drink, what you're exposed to in your environment. And it tells us what you're tolerant to and what you're intolerant to, what you're hypersensitive to. What is using up your vitality that you don't know about because the reactions occur 3 hours to 3 weeks after exposure? That's why you need an ex vivo LRA, ex vivo lymphocyte response assay, to find out what you can eat that you can digest, take up and assimilate, utilize and eliminate without immune burden. So that's number 4. And the goal is to have no hypersensitivities, no foods, chemicals, or medications or environmental chemicals that are burdening your immune system and burning up your vitality. The next test is urine pH after rest. It's a measure of cellular acid state, what's called metabolic cellular acidosis. It's a measure of whether you've got enough magnesium inside your cell. And the healthy range is 6.5 to 7.5. And many people are below 6.5, and it's what's called a logarithmic scale, which means every number different is a factor of 10. So if you go from 6.5 to 5.5, that's a 10-fold difference. If you go from 6.5 to 4.5, that's a 100-fold difference. So small changes in pH at the cellular level, or, as we're talking about the urine pH, small changes have a profound impact on whether you're resilient and whether you can resist the toxins of the environment, or whether the door is open because you don't have the healthy protective antioxidants, buffering minerals, and cofactors to protect you from the challenges of the 21st century.
Absolutely.
The next test is a vitamin D level, and we suggest 25-hydroxy-D. I know that many colleagues say, well, everybody's deficient in vitamin D, so don't even measure it. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, and being deficient is not a good thing because it's not really a vitamin. It's a neurohormone. And the healthy people have 50 to 80 nanograms per ml, and the average American or Canadian probably has less than 20.
Right.
And yes, in theory, if you took a sunbath in the nude, you would get some vitamin D, and quite a nice vitamin D boost. But unless you're a lifeguard in Tel Aviv Beach, you don't have enough of your surface area, enough of your skin exposed to get enough vitamin D if you go outside with clothes on. And unless you're, have the opportunity to go outside without clothes or prefer to be without clothes, which most of us don't, you're not going to get enough vitamin D from the sun. So forget about it.
I think it's important.
And Dr. Michael Hollick, Dr. Michael Hollick, who's known as Dr. Sunshine, a colleague of mine whose full expertise is in the vitamin D issue, he points out that many millions of people in North America don't absorb vitamin D from their gut. So they have to take it as drops under the tongue before they swallow. It goes to the brain before the body. And now I've had colleagues, physicians tell me from all over North America that they gave lots of vitamin D by mouth and people didn't get adequate vitamin D replenishment, but they gave it as drops under the tongue before swallowing, and now people were doing much better.
Now, what is your opinion? Let me just ask you.
How to get it in the body.
Then vitamin D is known to have the possibility to be toxic if you overdose it, especially if not taken in concert with other nutrients.
Let me agree with you.
Just want to warn people to just increasing it and taking.
Let me agree and modify.
Good.
If you only take vitamin D in high amounts and you don't take what's called vitamin K2,
right,
you can have problems. But nobody should ever have those problems. We use physiology before pharmacology. We recommend that folks take a balanced base of D3 and K2 so you have enough to carboxylate the very specialized amino acid called dicarboxyglutamic acid, which is necessary to bind the minerals like calcium and magnesium to build your bones.
Excellent.
And we do have evidence, my colleague Susan Brown and I, of building new bone by DEXA confirmation in just 2 years of following this nutritionally competent approach.
I done it myself.
So
I had osteoporosis. I took the vitamins. It's gone. It works.
So vitamin D is a neurohormone. It helps regulate cell growth. It says to cells, we need more of you, or it says to cells, we have enough of you. So it's really, as I said, a neurohormone. And 50 to 80 is the range that healthy people have. Yes, you need to have other nutrients and essential factors along with the symphony of nutritional competence. So it isn't just one instrument or just one molecule to the exclusion of all else. But when you have a basic amount of D3 and K2, then you can add drops of D3 to bring you into that 50 to 80 range while still having enough K2 so your liver carboxylates the glutamic acid to make the dicarboxyglutamic acid that builds the bones.
Excellent. Next one, omega-3 index, so important.
Right. Omega-3 index, Bill Harris's test, it looks at the ratio of two different kinds of essential fats. We need both omega-3 and omega-6. The problem is that if you eat packaged processed food, you're going to get, or have edible oils in your diet, you're going to have way too much omega-6 and probably too little omega-3. So we recommend doing an omega-3 index. It should be more than 8%. I'm glad to tell you mine was 13.3% because I supplement with 6 to 10 grams a day of EPA DHA distilled under nitrogen to remove toxins and protect those essential fats, but to balance out the omega-3 to 6 ratio in my diet.
Excellent.
And then the last one is this measure of DNA oxidative stress, the genetic code being oxidized or at risk of damage. It's 8-oxoguanine. That's the name of the test. It's a spot urine test, so it's an easy collection of a spot urine, and it's always presented per milligram of creatinine, which is why you can just take a random urine and then correct the value to the per milligram of creatinine. And the goal value is less than 5 nanograms of the 8-hydroxyguanine per milligram of creatinine. Less than 5 nanograms is the goal value. So now you know which 8 tests cover all of lifestyle and epigenetics, and tell me what your value is compared to that best outcome goal value, and I can tell you what to do in regard to lifestyle, in regard to what you eat, drink, think, and do, in light of our decades of experience at translating information and inspiration into an action plan. And yes, there is some effort and perspiration on the part of the person, but at least we can help them know where to celebrate that they're strong and resilient because they're at their goal value or goal range, but also where they're at risk and what to do about it in regard to changing habits of daily living.
And I absolutely love what you said today. That is so important for people that want to be healthy, not just rely on what their doctor tells you is normal, because normal is just average. And I always have my favorite idea of what is average is somebody with the head in the oven and the feet in a bucket of ice water and says, on average, I feel great.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. And just a footnote on that, the term normal is actually a mathematical term having to do with usual statistically for the population we're looking at, has nothing to do with the actual meaning of common parlance normal. And one of the things I did when I took over the clinical center labs at the National Institutes of Health was I changed the reports. So we reported the usual range, also known as the normal range, but we reported the usual range. And all over NIH, doctors called up and said, I don't want the usual range. I want the normal range. And we had to explain to them it's the same thing.
Yes.
You've been fooled for years thinking that normal means normal. It means statistically usual.
Right.
Having nothing to do with normality.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful book for people who are technical and professional called Beyond Normality by Galen and Gambino, published about 1976. And that was transformative as a step forward, and what we're talking about today is the next generation after that, the next step into personalized, proactive, predictive, primary prevention practices to save your life and to help you feel and function well, whatever your age and whatever your prior risks might be.
Wow, that is so wonderful. I always tell my clients, just normal doesn't mean it's healthy. It's just normal is sick, because who takes blood from healthy people? Hardly anyone.
Actually, my friend Hugh Reardon in Wichita, Kansas, in the United States, spent 2 years trying to find 100 people in the greater Wichita area who are asymptomatic to do a study on healthy people, and he had trouble finding them. And so did Emanuel Chereskin, one of my many mentors who had the concept of an optimum daily intake, not just a daily value. What we have on the label of supplements is how much you need to avoid deficiency diseases like kwashiorkor, pellagra, etc. And I don't want anyone to have those. But it tells you nothing about what you need to be healthy in the 21st century. And that's where we've added a next generation.
And that is a wonderful thought of ending the show. To end it, why don't you share a link where they can contact you before we wrap up?
Oh, thank you. It's drrussellJaffe.com. DRUSSELLJAFFE.com. drrussellJaffe.com. From there, you can get to any of a dozen different, either more academic and technical websites or functional websites to meet your needs. We're doing our best to make available the news, because this is news people need and solutions they can use. It's just with your help, we can get the message out. And without your help, we won't be able to.
Yes, and I absolutely love what you do, and I recommend to all the listeners to go to the website, check it out, and do what they can to get or stay healthy and well. Thank you so much for being on the show. And please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions, thoughts, comments, or suggestions. Or if you'd like to contact Dr. Jaffe, my email here is christine@communityradio.ca, or you can contact me through my website, docchristine.com. I'm always grateful for any feedback. And I also want to extend a special thank you to today's producer, Ron Goyash. Thanks, Ron. Thank you all for listening to Healthy Alternatives. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Sauer. Tune in next Thursday at noon on 97.5 CIO-EFM Community Radio with live stream on communityradio.ca for the next episode. Goodbye and have a great day.